So here's a question that's really at the heart of education right now. To teach students how to navigate this new world of AI, do teachers actually have to, live it themselves? Do they have to practice what they preach? Let's dive in. I mean, think about it. This isn't some future gazing scenario anymore. It's happening in classrooms today. Any student, anywhere, can get a super fluent, super confident sounding answer in just a few seconds. So when that happens, the old model of just teaching facts, well, it starts to look pretty shaky, doesn't it? It really forces us to ask, what skills truly matter now? You can almost think of AI as this new entity in the classroom. We're calling it a surrogate knower. It's this alternative source of knowledge that sounds incredibly authoritative, even when it's just, making stuff up. And that completely changes the game for teachers and students alike. Which brings us to the big dilemma for every educator out there. Is it enough to just know about these new AI skills? To say, read up on them and design some lessons? Or is it crucial for teachers to actually get their hands dirty, to personally use AI, to fail with it, get fooled by it, and then model that whole messy process of using your judgment right there in front of their students? To really answer that, we first have to get a handle on the stakes. I mean, what actually happens when we put this incredibly powerful tool into students' hands without a new game plan? Well, the biggest risk we face has a name: cognitive offloading. And honestly, it's something we all do. It's that natural human tendency to let our tools do the heavy lifting for us mentally. We do it with calculators, we do it with GPS to get around town, and now we're doing it with AI, but on a whole other level. We're basically outsourcing the work of thinking. And look, this isn't just a theory. A major study from Microsoft Research found this really clear trade-off. The more people used AI, the less they actually used their own critical thinking skills. And this effect was even stronger when they felt they could trust the AI system. And this wasn't some tiny little study either. They looked at 319 experienced knowledge workers. We're talking about professionals whose entire job is to think for a living. And even among these experts, the pattern was totally clear. So here's the really scary part. If trained, experienced adults can so easily slip into this state of uncritical reliance, what chance do students have? Without the right guidance, they're going to learn to just trust the tool, which completely bypasses the very skills we need them to be building. Okay, so this risk, this cognitive offloading, it demands a pretty fundamental shift in what a teacher is supposed to be. It's just not about delivering information anymore. The role of the teacher is moving away from being the content expert, the person who has all the answers, and toward being an epistemic mentor. That's a fancy term for a guide. Someone who shows students how to build knowledge, how to question their sources, and how to verify what's true in a world that is just flooded with information. So how in the world do you teach someone how to think? Well, learning science actually gives us a really powerful model for this. It's called cognitive apprenticeship. The basic idea is simple but profound. An expert, in this case the teacher, has to make their own invisible thinking processes visible. They have to show their work, so the novice, the student, can watch and copy and eventually make that process their own. And there's a clear process for it. It all starts with the teacher modeling the skill, just doing it out loud. Then comes coaching and giving support, or scaffolding. Eventually, students start to articulate their own thinking and reflect on it. But you see, it all kicks off with that first step, the demonstration, the modeling. Now, this whole concept of making your thinking visible isn't just some one-off theory. It's actually a foundational idea that's supported by a whole lot of research from different fields. The whole argument for teachers needing to practice these skills themselves really rests on four solid pillars of evidence. We've got cognitive apprenticeship, which we just talked about. Then there's observational learning theory, which basically shows that students learn from what their teachers do, not just from what they say. We also have massive studies showing critical thinking has to be taught explicitly. And finally, tons of research on learning transfer shows that skills learned in a classroom don't just magically transfer to the real world on their own. And the evidence for this is getting more and more urgent, like right now. Just look at the findings from the last couple of years. In 2024, a study found that AI tutors could actually hurt learning. In 2025, we saw that clear link between trusting AI and thinking less critically. And in 2026, research showed that even when you train students to double-check AI's work, that training kind of falls apart when they're under a time crunch, which, let's be honest, they always are. So you have all this evidence, and it's all pointing in one clear direction. So what does the solution actually look like in a real classroom? The good news is the answer isn't that every single teacher needs to become some kind of prompt engineering wizard. That's not realistic. Instead, what we're talking about is a practical middle ground. We call it sufficient embodiment. And all it means is having just enough hands-on practice to be able to genuinely and authentically model these critical thinking skills for your students. And here's how that practice connects directly to the skills kids need. To teach critical evaluation, a teacher needs to have personally been tricked by convincing AI error. That's how you build what's called epistemic suspicion, a healthy skepticism. To teach ethical judgment, you have to follow the same rules you set for your students. It really is all about showing them how it's done, not just telling them. Okay, so what does it really mean to be an authentic mentor in this new AI era? And maybe more importantly, what are the risks if we fall short? Well, if teachers only design lessons about AI without actually practicing the skills themselves, what we're calling that design-only approach, it breaks down in two really big ways. First, there's a mechanism failure. The students never actually see what it looks like to push back against a quick, easy AI answer. And second, there's a legitimacy failure. Students are smart. They see the gap between do as I say and do as I do, and that just erodes trust. This right here, this chart, it pulls the whole argument together. You can see the path. Teacher practice leads to authentic modeling, which helps students fight off that cognitive offloading. But if you take that teacher practice out of the equation, well, the path leads straight to overtrusting the AI and really shallow learning. It is the absolute linchpin of the whole system. Ultimately, this all comes down to a huge shift in where a teacher's authority comes from. It's no longer about being the person in the room with all the facts memorized. It's about being the person who can honestly say, I can show you how to find a trustworthy answer, how to make a good judgment call, and how to be comfortable when things are uncertain. And that shift right there really defines the path forward for education in a world that is completely saturated with artificial intelligence. So we're left with this final question, and it's a big one. The choice we make is going to define the purpose of our schools. Are we preparing students to be content experts for a world that, frankly, doesn't really exist anymore? Or are we preparing them to be those epistemic mentors, guides with the judgment and wisdom to navigate the really complex world that's already here?